We are super excited to introduce you to the man behind the words, Gord, speaking from his personal experiences, all about how to have great conversations, to listen and enjoy, and we want to hear your feedback.
Welcome, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here today. My name is Gord Smith, and I'm an honorary onliner. I have my shirt, right? You can see here the online logo. Hopefully you can see it. I can't show you, but I actually have my socks on. What I wanted to share with you today is some ideas around what allows some consultants to hold trusted advisor status while others struggle to do it. So I'm going to walk you through some concepts around advanced consultative conversations that'll give you some insight into how to create those types of conversations with your clients. A little bit about me. I won't spend very long, but I come from a consulting background and a high-tech background. I worked for SAP and Siebel Oracle for years. I then spent 5 years at Deloitte in their management consulting practice, working on a variety of things. And then I started a consulting company with a bunch of buddies and grew it to about 400 people and then sold it. In those travels, I actually implemented the Rain Group methods around consulting in our consulting force first, and then across the whole organization. After I completed the acquisition, I decided to join Rain Group, and here I am. So I'm 4 years into it. I would say the majority of the consulting work that I do is with management consultants, IT consultants, architects and engineers. You can see some of the clients below. I'm currently doing a project with CGI, their VPs of services. There's about 100 of them. I've also done work with the Boston Consulting Group and various other organizations. So that's a little bit about me. This is the agenda I'm going to cover today. So we'll talk a little bit about clients. Like, clients are a little different. It's a little harder these days. They're a little bit more informed. I think their expectations are a little higher. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about what do individuals that are really successful at consulting, what do they do differently and how do they do it? Compare and contrast what I would call foundational consultative conversations versus advanced consultative conversations, and talk about, we'll transition and maybe introduce a couple practices that would make sense. So without further ado, I want to start with a poll. What has been the most significant changes in buyers or clients over the last 5 years? So I'll kind of go through them and share some of my experience, and then we'll talk about, what's been the overall experience. So buyer research, markets are changing. So I had a really good example of this. I sent one of my consultants to meet with Descartes Systems a few years ago, and a very senior officer of that company had called, the COO, and said, I don't know whether I should continue with my dynamic CRM implementation or should I implement SAP CRM, which is a good question. And so I sent, his name was Nesh, he went down to see him, very seasoned consultant. And he had a very different interaction, I think, that indicated how the market is changing. The CEO walked in the room and he said, I don't want to see any of your slides. I've done a bunch of research on this topic. All I want to know is, how do you support subscription accounting in Dynamics CRM? So what this provides evidence of is that clients are doing their own research. They're really well informed. The bar is super high for consultants, and they expect you to show up with, value defined, a hypothesis of value, or some other kind of insight that is valuable, right? Luckily, in that case, my consultant knew exactly what the answer was. But a typical conversation might have been, talk a little bit about the company. Can I ask you a few questions about your problems? And that's still valid, but you have to respond to this changing dynamic that clients are really well informed. Procurement and buying committees are everywhere. There's been a lot of data published lately where, if you're trying to interact with a client and it's in the pursuit of some new business that, 5 years ago there was maybe, 3 or 4 people involved. Now there's 10 and there's procurement. So that's a really big shift in the way clients interact. A lot to do with compliance, a lot to do with being transparent. To the buyer, everything looks the same. So I have in a lot of cases, I will critique an introductory conversation deck. Hey, I'm going to see this client where we want to talk to them about cybersecurity, or we want to talk to them about our great CRM practice. Here's the kind of slides that I want to use. And 9 times out of 10, they all say the same thing. It doesn't matter which consulting organization. They talk about their organization. Hey, we're big. Hey, we have lots of skills. Hey, we have these service lines. Hey, we have all these other capabilities. And when the buyer gets 1 or 2 or 3 of those in a row, it's pedestrian. It all sounds the same. The other thing that's really changed is getting buyers' attention. They're distracted. People are overworked. They don't have enough time. They kind of shy away from meetings, and it's really hard to stand out. And then finally, is it one of these, or is the answer all of the above? The answer is all of the above.
Hey Gord, it's Laura here. I'm just curious, are any of these trends that are more important than others?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would, from my perspective, I would say that probably A, B, and C are causing more disruption in the consulting space. The buyer's expectations are high. There's more clients involved. There's more people to interact with, and the clients are looking for things that are really specifically different about the firms they're dealing with, and sometimes that's really hard to articulate. So yeah, so I would say A, B, and C.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. That's the market. Now, when we talk about consulting and what's changed from the client's perspective, we did a recent study at the Rain Group where we talked to 700 organizations that were responsible for purchasing a whole number of things, lots of consulting in there, but it was a pretty large sample. There was 3.1 billion in products and services, and we had over 300 direct conversations with buyers and clients. And the fundamental thing that we were trying to determine, sort of the core of the research, was, what the organizations that you work with, the ones that you trust, the ones that are more likely to have a long-term relationship with you, what do they do different than the rest? And it yielded some really interesting results. So let me kind of pull up a secondary poll. So when you think about that question, you sit in your seat, you're a consultant, you have your clients that you're working with, and there were 42 factors that we looked at in total. These were some of the top 5, so I'll kind of walk you through them. Persuaded me we would achieve the results. So in consulting, often the success is viewed as, was the project on time? Was it on budget? Which are good measures of success, but that's not really what the client's buying. What the client's buying is the business outcomes of the project, not just the project was live. The project could be live and on budget, but doesn't deliver any of the outcomes, whether it's a cost reduction, whether it's a risk reduction, whether it's a revenue lift, right? So clients are, the really good organizations are really good at persuading the client that they would achieve the results, that they're actually going to get the business outcomes, more than just a project that's live and on budget. The clients obviously want, regardless of who they're working with, they want to have some kind of personal connection. They want to feel like they have some relationship with the individual. Thirdly, educating new ideas and perspectives. This is a really new way of thinking. So this is about proactively bringing new ideas to your clients. And if you do that on a consistent basis, and you view your role as a consultant as an educator, and you educate with new ideas, that's another distinguishing features of trusted advisors, that you're able to convince the client that the overall value from your company or online is superior, And another really important one is avoiding pitfalls. So you really know what you're doing. If you're doing digital transformation, you understand all the ways in which it can go sideways, and you can communicate clearly how you would avoid those. Or if you're doing cybersecurity, that, again, you know all the pitfalls, and you're able to have a really deep conversation about, how to structure, run, and be successful with the project. So interestingly, the number one thing that separates, the ones that get to the trusted advisor status from the rest is C. They viewed their role as an education role, and that they were constantly educating the client on new ideas and perspectives. What are the top 10 attributes that separate the advanced consultative conversations from the rest? Number one, educating on new ideas is critical. Collaborating with me, and I'll talk a little bit about more what that means, but that the clients want to feel like you're on the same side of the table with them, that you're working with them. They want it to be done with them, not to them, which is a different type of philosophy around delivery. And they want to know that they're going to get the outcomes, right? So when you talk about educating me on new ideas and perspectives, I've worked with Boston Consulting Group, I've trained partners at Deloitte and PwC, and they do a really good job of bringing in new perspectives. So a good example would be they would have a regular stream of research that is produced by their organization. So Deloitte used to have the annual CFO survey, or they would have our global manufacturing study, or they would have top trends in cybersecurity. And they wouldn't just send this detailed research to the client. They set up a meeting, and they go in and say, hey, here's a new study that we have. Here's some new things that we've uncovered in this area, and here's what we think the implications are to you. And they do that without any expectation of revenue or in the pursuit of some closed business. They do it because they believe that their job is to educate their client on new ideas and perspectives. So top consultants do that all the time. And we've studied this phenomenon of organizations that have a culture of their consultants bringing new ideas to their clients, and they have astronomically higher loyalty because every interaction with the consultant is of value. And the way I kind of encourage consultants to think about their conversations is what new idea or what aha moment are you going to bring to this meeting, something the client hadn't thought about before that's new and novel, that's going to help you earn the trusted advisor status. So every time you interact, you should be thinking about, hey, what's my aha moment for this particular client? I'm not suggesting that the rest of these things aren't important, like listening, understanding my needs, avoiding pitfalls, developing a compelling solution, purchasing, et cetera, connecting with me. They're all important, but the clients told us that 1, 2, and 3, educating me on new ideas, collaborating with me, and persuading me we'd achieve the results, are the things that most separate trusted advisors from the rest. So creating some discipline and focus around that is really important to getting that next level of trusted advisor status. Okay, and what's also very interesting is that when you look at the organizations that weren't the top performers in this particular study, or the organizations that finished second, if they're pursuing new business, which is a silver medal, which is the worst position to be in, that they put really low importance on the things that are really important to the client. So educating me on new ideas and perspectives, consultants that do that really well are recognized as trusted advisors. Those that are lower performing, that's the 42nd thing they did in relative terms when we looked at the factors. You can see collaborated with me was 26, and persuaded me we would achieve the results. So the consulting implication is that, as part of your ongoing conversations, you should always be thinking about What are you going to educate the client on? You should be really focused on the business outcomes, not so much the technology, the project, or the budget. Not to say that those aren't important, but what the client really wants are the outcomes. And then collaborating with me or collaborating with the client so they feel like they're sitting on the same side of the table with you. So, you know, online being in the IT services space, like many others, if you were to zero in on one service line, for example, CRM, if you looked at Salesforce implementations, if I had $1 for every time I went into a client and they said we implemented Salesforce.com and we got no value, the project was probably on time, the project was probably on budget, but it wasn't clear what outcomes were being achieved, and that's why, you know, the satisfaction rating is so low. So those would be the three things as a consultant that I would focus on.
Hey Gord, it's Sarah here. I just had a quick question on that. How does a consultant prepare for delivering insights?
So the thing that is really important is that every consultant sits in a service line and has a predominant, you know, kind of area of expertise, whether it's cybersecurity, CRM, you know, digital transformation, right? And so if you want to deliver an insight, you need to understand your client holistically, inside and outside of your service line. So you should know their business. You should know some of their challenges and pain points. You know, I always encourage people to read annual reports, you know, investor presentations, have a good understanding of who your client's competitors are and how they're performing relative to their organization. You should know some of the processes and business issues by service line. So when you're equipped with a broad understanding of the client, then you'll know what will resonate. When I was running my consulting company with my partners, Ideaca, we were working with Suncor, and we had a very substantial relationship with them. But it was only in one group. It was in the exploration and production group, and we didn't have any relationships in midstream, downstream, retail, lubrication. And our consultant team got together to figure out, hey, how can we broaden our relationships? We kind of spent some time to study what are some of the issues that we're facing. We talked to some other people, and we determined that one of the areas that they were struggling at that time was with transportation, and they could produce an infinite amount of oil, but they couldn't get it to market. And they were grappling with, when does it make sense to ship crude oil by rail, and when should you send it through traditional transportation channels? So we built a point of view. Based on our knowledge, we were equipped with a total understanding of the client. We built a point of view on when does it make economic sense to ship oil by rail, and we use that to educate the C-suite on, you know, how to tackle that business issue, and that got us perceived in a different light, because we weren't trying to sell them anything. We were just trying to educate them. We took a super relevant business issue and educated them on the details of it. And, you know, we got a lot of traction with C-level people. So my suggestion to consultants is, you know, have your technical specialty, but continue to develop broad expertise. That also helps with cross-selling and upselling, because if you have a broad understanding of the client, in addition to the detailed understanding in your service line, then you'll be much more capable of identifying cross-service line opportunity and getting the right people involved. This is the model that, you know, the BCGs and the Deloittes and others were used. They think about consulting as connecting, convincing, and collaborating with their clients. Connecting is kind of the lowest level. You know, that's, you know, do you understand their needs? Can you present a solution? You know, does the consultant listen to me? Do I have a personal connection? That's sort of the price of entry, right? Really, really good consultants are very convincing. And so they're convincing through a number of ways, right? Obviously, they're experienced and confident in the way they interact. They know their stuff. You know, obviously, high levels of professionalism. They do what they say. They do it on time. But they focus a lot on the impact. What are the business outcomes that the project will involve? Can you persuade the client or inform the client of what the business outcomes of the project would be, focusing on return. The other thing they do very well is they don't talk generically about what value they provide. Every kind of communication around value is customized and specific to the client. So the days of the general introduction deck for a consultant are gone. They need to be tailored. That avoids going into a client situation and you're saying all the same things as all your competitors are saying. And at the end of the day, they're like, kind of, how is online different from company X and company Y? Because they take the time to customize things. Where the real source of trusted advisor status is in the collaborate. Obviously, you need to be easy to buy from, and you need to anticipate client issues and bring them to the forefront before they happen. Being proactive, being responsive. But to me, it's about the what, and the trusted advisors comes from communicating those new ideas and perspectives, communicating them in compelling ways, like convincing stories, and through the collaboration. And the collaboration is about sitting at the same side of the table, but it's also not being afraid to ask the tough questions of the client. There's always this inclination with consultants that you always have to please the client, which is mostly true, but not entirely true. Sometimes the clients will value some pushback. And if you don't think it's the right idea, if you don't think if you think there's a better way, or if you want to make a recommendation, or if you've done it a different way with another client, they want to hear it. And sometimes they want to hear the bad news too. They want, as long as it's done in a professional way. So, being able to be balanced in how you communicate with your client, pushing back, bringing new ideas, those are the things that separate great consultants, the ones that achieve that trusted advisor status, from the rest.
Laura again here. I really love your insights, especially from your background and your experience. We talk about collaboration, and we do a lot of collaborating at online. So it's really nice to hear you send those messages and deliver the messages from experience. And I think you nailed it when you were talking about how a consultant can become essential to a client and become that trusted advisor status that we all strive to have.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, it's not easy. It takes practice, but the rewards are astronomical. When you get that status, you're able to avoid RFPs. You're able to get information about the client because they trust you that nobody else has, right? The things that, you're able to position more work, different work, because they trust you. Here's a comparison. This is kind of where the consulting space is going. We have the column here, which is traditional consultative conversations. And here you have the future. What does the future look like? So consultants, we've all been trained to, go meet the client, ask them a bunch of questions that gets a good understanding of need and scope, and then say, here's how we can help you. The future is often the client's need is somewhat constrained, maybe vision constrained, or maybe they haven't, taken a look throughout the enterprise. So the next generation of consultants will be able to, if a client says, I need X, they're going to say, have you thought about maybe X and Y? They're going to redefine the need. They're going to create a new vision of what's possible. They're going to inspire them with some new ideas in addition to their existing requirements, all in the spirit of driving change and driving business outcomes. So they're not as much about, here's the scope, here's what we can do. They're more about, what does the business need? You've described this scope. I think you'd get more value out of, your existing scope plus a few other things. Have you thought of that? That's sort of core, right? That's a little bit about pushing back. That's a little bit about being bold, and it's a lot about knowing the client's business and being a really good consultant and giving them the best possible advice. So on knowledge side, consulting organizations grow up as functional experts, like in your world, digital transformation, cybersecurity, customer experience, CRM, etc. In order to get that trusted advisor status, you need to know a little bit about the client over and above your service line. You need to know, about their industry, their competitors, all the things that I talked to about delivering insights. So you have the functional expertise, but you also have the broad knowledge, broad business acumen to have a conversations, with more senior people and broader audiences in a compelling and interesting way. Again, traditional consultative selling is defined by the client. Here's what I need. What's the price? Tell me how long it will take. In the new world, we don't always just accept that, these are only the needs that the client have. We try to introduce additional needs that will provide more value to the client, maybe a better solution. So there's this concept of needs being redefined by the consultant. Vision, around impact, very narrow approach around vision. You see this all this time. I don't know how many times I've been in clients where they say, oh, we're going to implement this solution for this department. So an example, big ERP implementation, we need a new finance system. Well, have you thought about, integrating your finance system with supply chain or HR or, your customer activities to get a broader integration across the company? So painting a new vision for the client. And then final, a couple other ones, the classic consulting organization, most conversations with the client is a capabilities pitch. They open up the trench coat and they say, here's all the other things we could do. Do you want some? And moving forward, it'll be more about really understanding the client and saying, here's a couple of hypotheses of value we have based on what we know about you. So you're not coming in with a product message or a service line message. You're coming in with a value message from understanding the client. The value to the client is increasingly not the service, but comes from the way the consultant interacts with the client. If they inspire with new ideas, if they focus on education, if they collaborate, if they do all those things, they are very different, and people buy from people, and they will be seen as different by the client. And then finally, collaboration, strictly, conversational, and now, folks are collaborating both conversational and in digital means. So that's kind of the high level overview of how consulting is changing. What I would suggest, a couple of things you might want to try or implement and think about after this session is, think about 2 or 3 clients you have. Think about what kind of new idea could you take to your clients that you could educate them on that would change their perception of you as a consultant. It doesn't have to be a big insight. It doesn't have to be something huge and compelling. It could be some unique perspective on, maybe something like the intersection between digital transformation and cybersecurity. Give that some thought, and we'll be back at it with some practical ideas around how to conduct or facilitate this type of collaboration.
Thank you so much, Gord. That was great insights. I can't wait to see part 2. See you soon.
Yep, looking forward to it.